The rhythm shows up quietly, already in motion, like it's been running long before I noticed. I match the pace without thinking, nothing to prove, nothing to fix, just a steady line to follow. Chords rolling with a soft pulse, never pushing ahead. The groove stays patient, comfortable in its own timing. I move through the moment with less resistance. Focus doesn't need effort here, it just stays. The bass draws a smooth circle underneath, never breaking it. Each return feels familiar, not repetitive, more like reassurance. Small details pass through the sound, a shift in tone, a breath between phrases. They add texture, then step aside. Time settles into an even pattern. Minutes don't stack, they spread out, leaving room to keep going. I don't look for a highlight, I don't wait for a drop. This track isn't built for that, it's built to hold. Guitar touches the edge of the rhythm, light enough to blend, clear enough to feel everything stays aligned. Thoughts appear, pause, then move on without leaving a trace. The hook glides by almost casual, it doesn't announce itself, it just fits. I stay with the flow as it repeats and shifts, never quite the same, never asking for attention. Outside movement blends into the background, inside the groove remains. Both exist without conflict, each supporting the other. As the later stretch opens up, nothing changes direction. The energy stays usable, steady enough to last when another track eventually arrives. This one releases smoothly, leaving behind momentum that carries forward without breaking the calm. The screen glows just enough to matter, edges softened by the hour. Keys click in a quiet rhythm, steady like they've done this before. Outside sounds keep their distance, traffic turns into texture, voices into motion. Nothing sharp enough to interrupt. I fall into a working pace that doesn't feel like effort. Thoughts line up, then move on, leaving space behind them. The groove stays consistent underneath a reliable path. Not exciting, not dull, just solid enough to trust. I don't rush through anything, I don't slow it down either. The moment finds its speed and holds it without asking. Chords roll forward with intention, never lingering too long. Guitar marks time at the edges, keeping everything aligned. Minutes stretch without pressure, tasks unfold one by one, each one landing where it needs to land. Oh, focus feels different at night, less sharp, more continuous. It doesn't spike, it stays. slides past, almost unnoticed. That's fine, it's not here to be remembered. It's here to keep things moving. I stay inside that flow, hands busy, mind quiet. Nothing competing for attention, nothing asking to be solved. Oh, the bass circles back again, familiar and steady. It doesn't change direction, it reinforces it. Somewhere along the way I realize time has passed, not because I checked, but because the work feels lighter. The sound keeps supporting the room, never stepping forward, never falling away. A presence that knows its place. Oh, as the later part of the track settles in, everything feels aligned, not finished, not waiting, just continuing. When the next song eventually arrives, this one leaves behind momentum, not silence, enough to keep going without breaking the rhythm. Different kind of quiet fills the space now, not softer, just clearer, like the air shifted slightly without changing that temperature. The rhythm stops a little closer, not asking permission, just finding its place between us. I notice my focus adjusts, my sharpened, I relax, but settle into something usable. Moving feels easier again, hands follow patterns they already know, but the mind stays out of the way. Kiss liquor with intention, small changes had enough. Nothing dramatic happens, but everything feels more awake. The bass carries a gentle clutch, never rushing, never dragging. It keeps things aligned without announcing itself. Outside, the night keeps moving, light splash, shadows stretch. The world stays active enough to feel present. I don't need a big moment here, I don't need a release. This lift is enough to reset attention. Passes too lightly, almost playful, then disappears again. It's not here to stay, just to remind. Time gains a little structure, and its feel defined again, but not tight. There's room to keep going without pressure. Guitar accents mark the edges, keeping the groove honest. The sound feels balanced, neither drifting nor pushing. I'll stay with that energy, letting it do its work quietly. Focus returns without effort. The track keeps breathing, small rises, small releases. Nothing exaggerated, nothing flash. As the later section rolls in, everything feels recentered, unenergized, now calm, just awaken nerves to continue. And the next song eventually arrives, this one leaves behind a refreshed sense of presence, like opening a window without letting the cold in.
Shows up before I notice it. Not demand attention, just steady enough to lean against. The night feels settled but not finished. There's still room to do a little more without forcing it. I move at a pace that doesn't need correction. Hands find their place, the moment stays open. Keys tap softly under the sound, a pattern that repeats without feeling small. Consistency feels good here. Thoughts stay practical, showing up one at a time, then stepping aside once they're done. The groove stays relaxed, not trying to lift, not trying to fade. It keeps a line I can follow without watching my steps. Outside, movement continues quietly. Lights pass. Engines hum, nothing interrupts the space I'm in. Feel the need to hurry. I don't feel stuck either. This middle ground holds just enough energy to stay useful. Chords roll forward with patience. Guitar stays close to the rhythm, never reaching too far, never pulling away. Time moves differently now. Minutes don't stack, they spread out, making space instead of pressure. A hook slides through, subtle enough to miss. If I'm not listening closely, that's fine. It does its job quietly. I stay with the sound, letting it support whatever I'm doing without shaping it. The bass circles back again, steady and familiar, not repeating itself, just reinforcing the mood. Somewhere along the way, focus becomes effortless, not intense, not sharp, just present. Keeps its balance, never leaning too far in any direction. That's what makes it last. As the later section settles, nothing feels unfinished. There's room to keep going, room to stop, room to stay exactly here. When another song eventually arrives, this one leaves behind a gentle clarity, not silence enough to continue without breaking the calm. A quieter tone settles into the space, not pulling attention, just lowering the ceiling a little, so everything feels closer. Movement becomes slower by choice, not because it has to. There's room to pause between actions without losing the thread. Keys arrive with weight behind them, each chord placed carefully, never to be noticed. The bass stays grounded, a low current moving underneath. It doesn't change direction, it keeps the ground stable. Time stretches into longer shapes, minutes feel wider, less sharp around the edges, easier to stay inside. I don't follow thoughts when they appear, they pass through softly, leaving no marks, no instructions. Guitar tones linger longer here, holding the air in place. The sound feels patient, comfortable with staying. The groove remains simple, almost circular. It doesn't build toward anything, it sustains. Outside, motion fades into texture inside. The pace stays even, nothing competes, nothing interrupts. A hook drifts by quietly, subtle enough to miss. Unless I'm listening in for it, that's exactly enough. I stay with the rhythm as it repeats and shifts slightly. Never the same twice, never demanding attention. Energy settles into a deeper layer, not tired, not alert, just present. The track opens more space by doing less. Silence feels supported, not empty. As the later stretch unfolds, everything feels balanced at a lower level. No need to rise again. When the next song eventually arrives, this one leaves behind a softened atmosphere, like a room after the lights dim, ready for whatever follows. A steady beat finds the room first, not loud, just enough to set the pace. The day hums along with it, somewhere in the background. I settle into the rhythm without checking where it came from. Movement feels lighter when nothing is being judged. Keys rolling soft patterns, guitar taps time at the edges. The groove stays consistent, a quiet engine that keeps going. Thoughts line up briefly, then drift aside. Focus lands where it needs to, no effort required. The bass circles back again, familiar but not demanding. It doesn't pull attention, it anchors it. I work through small moments, one after another. No big swings, just steady motion. The hook passes through almost unnoticed, that's fine. It's not here to announce itself, just to keep the flow intact. Time loosens its grip, minutes blend, the sound stays present while everything else fades. I don't need the track to peak, I don't need it to pause, as long as it keeps moving. So do I. holds and the pace feels right. When the song circles back, it feels familiar without repeating itself. That balance matters when the work needs space. I stay in that lane, calm, productive, unbothered. The playlist keeps rolling, and that's exactly what it's for. Everything feels lighter at this point. Not because it changed, but because it doesn't need to be carried anymore. The night holds what's left without asking for details. It knows how to keep things simple. I let the sound move a little further away, not leaving, just giving space. Distance feels kind here. Moments pass without shame. No edges, no urgency, just time unfolding on its own. A voice drips in softly, almost blended with the air. It doesn't introduce itself, it doesn't stay long. Breathing continues in the background, steady enough to forget. The body understands what to do next without instructions. Notes fall gently, then stay suspended just long enough to be felt. Nothing pulls attention forward, nothing calls it back. The middle space holds everything evenly. I don't check where the song is going, I don't wait for it to end. It moves at a pace that doesn't need watching. Light outside becomes secondary, shadows soften, details fade into tone. The music grows thinner, not disappearing, just becoming less defined, like something settling. Thoughts don't gather tonight, they pass through as impressions, then dissolve before forming. Wait, there's comfort in how little is happening. No signal to respond, no expectation to finish. Time stretches quietly, minutes lose their edges. Nothing marks progress and nothing needs to. The sound remains warm, even as it pulls back, it leaves behind the feeling of being held, then lets go. As attention drifts elsewhere, the music doesn't follow. It stays where it is, doing its job. When silence eventually takes over, it doesn't arrive suddenly. It continues the same calm. The sound created every
feels complete enough, not concluded, not resolved, just settled. I stay there for a moment, letting the quiet keep its shape until it's ready to become something else.
Everything feels slower in a gentle way, not because it stopped, but because nothing is pushing anymore. The space around the sound feels wider now. There's room to sit with the moment without naming it. I don't track where the song is going, I don't wait for it to finish. It moves at a pace that doesn't need attention. A voice passes through softly, almost part of the air. It doesn't carry a message, it doesn't need one. Breathe and stay steady, easy to forget, easy to trust. The body knows this rhythm already. Oh, to arrive, hold, just hold it on, then release. Nothing stays heavy, nothing feels incomplete. Time loosens its shape and it's blurring to one another without disappearing. They simply exist. The sound grows wider, not fading, just becoming less defined, like something settling into place. Thoughts don't gather here, they appear, then drift off before forming waves. There's comfort in how little is happening. No signal to respond, no reason to move. The bass remains low and warm, a quiet reminder that something solid is still here, even as everything softens. Guitar tones linger at the edges, color without contrast. They don't draw lines, they let them fade. The track continues by doing less, by leaving space, by staying consistent. Attention wanders, returns, and wanders again. Nothing changes because of it. As the later moments unfold, the atmosphere feels complete, not finished, not resolved, just settled. The sound doesn't ask to be remembered, it stays long enough to feel safe. loosens its hold, and silence eventually arrives. It doesn't replace the music, yet continues the same tone in a different form. Everything rests where it ended. That's enough. The playlist has nothing left to say, and neither do spilling through the window, city humming underneath it all. Nothing heavy on my shoulders, just the rhythm in the walls. I let the day fade in the background, no replay, no second take. Every thought moves a little slower, every breath feels easier to make. The sound slides in without asking, like it knows the pace I need. Not here to tell a story, just here to let me breathe. I don't need the night to change me, I don't need to feel brand new. I just want a steady moment I can settle into. The groove stays slow and patient, never rushing where to go. Time bends just enough to lose its shape and flow. Conversations turn to echoes, lights blur soft around the room. Nothing pulling my attention, nothing asking me to move. I sit inside the calm a while, let it stretch, let it stay. This kind of quiet doesn't disappear, it just carries me away. The music keeps on breathing, like a second heartbeat close. Every note feels comfortable, nothing sharp, nothing forced. When the track keeps rolling forward, I don't notice where it ends. That's how I know it's working. It feels more like a friend, so let it play a little longer. Let the room stay just like this. No rush to touch tomorrow, no reason to resist. I stay right here inside the sound, letting everything slow. The night can do whatever it wants. I've got nowhere else to go, nowhere else to go. Night feels different when nothing is expected. No plans waiting, no messages pouring at the moment. Just a low hum of the city doing its thing. Let the rhythm sit a little closer now, not to focus on it, just to feel the pace it keeps. There's comfort in something steady, it doesn't need a reaction. Lights outside turn into color, not shapes anymore. Movement turns that stripe, like the night is sent to fight itself on. doesn't rush forward, it doesn't fall back. It just stays where it belongs. Starts drifting, then drift out again. They don't linger long enough to build a story. Tonight isn't asking for a peace. Stretch across the space slowly, each chord landing without pressure. The sound knows how much room to take and how much to leave open. Time passes without being measured. Minutes soften, edges disappear. Everything feels less urgent when nothing is competing for attention. The groove repeats but not in a way that feels obvious. It feels familiar, like something I've always known without remembering where I've been. I stay in the pocket, cool, unbothered, letting the track do what it's meant to do. The lights, everything already sits at a level that feels right. The hook slides through, almost unnoticed. Not meant to grab, just meant to hold. That's enough. Then I continues unfolding layer by layer without asking me to keep up. Unfinished. The space to keep going, space to stay exactly here. When the next track eventually fades in, this one doesn't disappear. It leaves behind the same calm it arrived with, like it was always part of the room.
Midnight, settle into the corners of the room without announcing itself. The air feels slower now, like I finally caught up. Street sounds drift in and out, never close enough to matter. Everything stays just out of reach, and that's exactly right. I lean into the rhythm, not looking for anything new. Some moments don't need meaning, they just need space. The bass moves steady under the floor, a quiet signal to relax. Nothing here is asking questions, nothing's waiting on an answer. Time doesn't disappear, it just softens around the edges. Minutes lose their shape when the groove stays consistent. I'm not checking how it started. The sound holds the middle, and the middle feels good. Lights blur into color, shadows stretch without drama. The night feels comfortable here, like it knows the rules. I let the track roll forward without paying attention to the change. That's how it should be, smooth enough to forget, solid enough to stay. No pressure to move, no reason to stop. Everything finds a pace that doesn't need adjusting. When the hook comes back around, it doesn't announce itself, it just slides in, familiar but unclear. I stay inside that feeling a while, cool
between tracks. The mood settles into something steady, not a highlight, not a break, just a place to stay for a while. The sound moves in gently, without pulling focus forward. It fills the space just enough to keep everything connected. I stay with the pace that's already here. No need to adjust it, no need to lean into it. It holds on its own. The bass stays low and consistent, a quiet light lining underneath. It doesn't ask to be followed, but it's always there. Thoughts drift past without collecting or anything. They come through lightly, then move on, leaving room behind them. Keys stretch out in open shapes. Guitar touches the edges of the rhythm. Nothing reaches too far, nothing falls away. Time feels even again. Minutes don't stack, they spread out, giving the moment space. And instead of pressure, the groove repeats, but never in exactly the same way. Familiar enough to trust, subtle enough to fade into the background. I don't check where I am in the playlist, I don't wait for a peak. This part isn't meant to stand out, it's meant to last. Outside sounds pass through occasionally, then disappear. They don't interrupt, they blend. The hook slides by quietly, almost unnoticed. That's intentional, it's there to support the flow, not to stop it. Everything stays balanced here, not lifted, not heavy, just settled in the middle. As the track continues, nothing needs resolving. There's room to keep going, room to stop listening, room to stay exactly where I am. When the next song eventually arrives, this one doesn't end sharply. It leaves behind a steady calm, keeping the playlist intact like it was always meant to be here. Somewhere past the usual hours, the city changes its tone, not quite unexactly, just was interested in being noticed. I stare up without a reason, about chasing sleep, not avoiding it either. The moment feels complete on its own. Neon reflections stretch across the grass, colors losing edges, movement slows into suggestion, like everything is deciding to stay abstract. The groove settled underneath it all, low and steady, a line I can follow without paying attention to where it leads. I let the sun stay close, not front and center, just near enough to shake the air around me. Thoughts pass through lightly, never stay moaning enough to turn into questions. 10 mic doesn't invite answers, keys open up with space between them. Each quarter arguing without urgency. The music understands patience better than I ever did. Time keeps going, but it doesn't press. Minutes feel wider, more forgiving, as if the night made room for them. Your bass circles back again, never repeating the same way twice. Familiar enough to trust, subtle enough to fade into the background. I don't check the clock anymore, numbers stop meaning much. took over and set its own pace. A whole just through, almost unnoticed. Right a moment meant to capture attention. Just a detail that shaped by toxic flicker and holding thicker again. Nothing dramatic happens, and that's exactly what makes it work. I sit inside the sound for a while, cool, unbothered, letting the track stretch as long as it warms. There's a comfort in knowing nothing needs to change for this to feel right. No build, no release, just continuation. As the later section settles in, everything feels balanced, not energized, not tired, just steady enough to stay here when another song eventually takes its place. This one doesn't leave abruptly, it dissolves into the same night. It was beautiful, even known exactly how it found it. Sound arrives without edges, more like a change in air than something new beginning. It takes a moment to notice. Distance grows between thoughts, not separation, just enough space for everything to move more slowly. A voice passes through, light enough to blend, never staying long in the same place. Breathing continues behind attention. Time moves forward, but it doesn't press. It doesn't ask to be measured. Notes settle and hold, then loosen, then hold again, as if learning how much weight they need. The room feels wider, not because it changed, but because nothing is filling it. That openness feels intentional. Small shifts happen gradually. A tone darkens, then clears. Nothing signals the change, it just happens. The sound remains thin, almost transparent. It supports silence instead of replacing it. Thoughts appear as fragments, then soften before becoming anything solid. They don't gather momentum here. The bass stays low and patient, a line that doesn't move forward or backward, it simply stays. Light outside becomes abstract, shapes lose importance. The scene reduces itself to motion and shape. There is no center to follow, no rise, no fall, only continuation. Attention drifts, returns, drifts again without all
distant, it becomes part of the space, not separate from it. Time stretches wider here, minutes lose definition, edges soften until nothing feels sharp. The track moves by doing less, by leaving room, by not insisting on being noticed. As the later section settles, everything feels suspended, not paused, just unhurried. When the next song eventually takes over, this one doesn't end, it dissolves, leaving the atmosphere intact as if it was always meant to stay that way. The day opens without asking for attention. Sounds move around naturally, footsteps, distant voices, things finding their place. May feel steady at this hour, not sharp, not soft, just present enough to work with. I fall into a rhythm that doesn't need adjusting. Movement feels easy when my phone is me in chords. The sound of our smooth me, not leading, not following. It settles into the space and stays there. Acts that up briefly, then move on. No pressure to hold them, no reason to chase them. Keys roll forward in open shapes, guitar marks time gently. The clue stays consistent, getting the moment to center. Time feels usable here, minutes don't rush, they stretch just enough to feel manageable. I don't need to change the mode, I don't need to raise it either. This balance does what it's supposed to do. The bass loops steadily ending me, never pulling focus. It supports everything else without asking to be noticed. I work through small moments, one to the next. Nothing dramatic happens, and that's exactly right. The hook passes through quietly, familiar without repeating itself. Keeps the flow intact without stopping the motion. Outside activity continues, inside focus stays. Both exist together without conflict. As the little portal, the track unfolds, everything feels alive. Not energized, not relaxed, just comfortably in motion. When the next song eventually arrives, this one leaves behind a clean sense of peace, ready for whatever flows. The evening settles into a steady rhythm, not slow, not rushed, just consistent enough to lean on. Traffic hums somewhere beyond the world, a distant reminder that time is moving, even when it doesn't feel like it is. I let that be enough. The sound slides in gradually, no sharp edges, no announcement. It finds its place and stays there. I move through small motions, hands busy, mind lighter than before. Nothing pulls too hard, nothing asks for explanation. The bass keeps circling back, familiar without repeating itself. It doesn't lead, it supports, holding everything together underneath. Thoughts show up, pause for a second, then drift away. They don't compete for space anymore. They know this isn't their moment. Keys stretch out softly, guitar marks time at the edges. The groove stays intact, a quiet line I can follow without thinking. Minutes stack gently, one after another. No pressure to count them, no pressure to make them useful. They pass on their own terms. How focus feels different like this. Less sharp, more stable. It doesn't spike, it holds. The hook comes around again, not louder, not brighter, just familiar enough to feel grounding. I stay in that middle space where effort and ease overlap. Work happens, rest happens, neither interrupts the other. Outside light changes slowly, barely noticeable. Inside the pace stays the same, and that consistency matters. The track keeps moving forward, not trying to impress, not trying to disappear. It does exactly what it needs to. As the later moments unfold, nothing feels unfinished. There's room to keep going, room to stop, room to stay right here. When the next song eventually arrives, this one doesn't end abruptly. It lets go naturally, like a hand releasing without needing to say goodbye. The pace changes without announcement, like something easing its grip. Nothing stops, nothing starts, it just softens. Sound pulls a little further back, leaving more room between moments. The space feels intentional, as if the night made space on purpose. I let attention drift wider, not focused on any one thing. Details lose priority, the background becomes enough. Keys fall in slow patterns, each one landing gently, never asking to be remembered, never disappearing completely. The bass stays close to the floor, steady, grounded, a quiet signal to relax further. Time loosens again, stretching out its edges. Minutes feel less specific, less concerned with order. Thoughts arrive briefly, then They don't build weight tonight. Guitar tones linger longer now, holding the air in place. The sound feels patient, willing to wait. There's no need to stay alert here, no need to lean forward. Everything important already passed through earlier. The groove stays simple, almost circular, like a path that doesn't rush toward an ending. Outside, motion continues quietly. Inside, the atmosphere stays level. Both feel balanced, neither pulling too hard. I notice how easy it is to stay present when nothing demands reaction. That ease settles in. The hook drifts through, barely noticeable, then dissolves back into the rest of the sound. As the later moments unfold, everything feels evenly spaced. Not empty, not full, just complete enough. This part of the playlist doesn't ask for attention. It prepares the ground for what comes next. When the track eventually thins out, it doesn't leave silence behind. It leaves calm, steady and usable, ready for the final shift.